Okay, so Fenella, you told us earlier that you hail from Delaware and have a degree in trout buggery. There are 48 seconds left on the clock and you have minus 75 points. Now, you can choose to hold what you have. Take the rotary penguin, the 3 jars of ceremonial tiny pickles, and the mandolin made out of cheetah's face skin, or you can gamble all of that for the bronze refrigerator, the porcelain bust of Dame Maggie Smith riding an elk, a signed portrait of Bobby Davro, a wheel of expensive cheese, several lifelike figurines of the cast of MASH, a bright orange used Nissan Micra, some tissues, and a velvet painting of hedgehogs done by a blind French chiropodist as a bet. If you choose to gamble, then you must make 3 out of the 8 words possible in the first 30 seconds, and you must be able to match up all the pink cups with their corresponding celebrity hairpiece before the buzzer sounds and we enter the quickfire round, where, if you've got 60% of the questions wrong, you will be quickly fired upon by our Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Okay, so unfortunately, after I've explained all that, we've run out of time. You forfeit the penguin, the pickles, cheetah-faced mandolin, your house, your car, your family, that Peruvian lover you took once while on holiday in Bern, and you are left penniless on the streets of Cincinnati and are forced to knit your underwear together as street art and perform a naked subway mime act just for spare change in the hope of attracting a rich man of low moral fiber with absolutely no standards whatsoever. Next week we'll be robbing and making destitute the sperm family from Miami Beach, Florida, but until then there'll be lots of other stuff on, so listen to that please. And talking about other stuff, why not stick the after-movie diner all the way in your ear trumpets while filleting a close family friend out in a shed during a dinner party or whatever you depraved bastards do while I'm not looking. Hello again and welcome to yet another exciting episode of the After Movie Diner, and boy do we have an episode for you. But just again, before we start this episode, because we have had some fantastic sponsors this month, I have to mention the wonderful Cartoon Curious podcast, which is hosted by Owen and Jake. They do an absolute tremendous job of talking about all your favorite animated TV shows or movies from your childhood. If it is drawn and voiced over and completely bizarre or rare or weird or wonderful, or even if it's not, even if it's really populist, and even if it's something that you dearly, dearly love, but it's animated, these guys talk about it on the Cartoon Curious podcast. And you can find that over at cartooncurious.libsyn.com. That's libsyn.com. It's also available on iTunes, and I believe plans are in the making to get it up on other places as well. But just type in Cartoon Curious into Google, the Cartoon Curious podcast, and check it out. Owen and Jake do a fantastic job. They also have guests on the show. I've guested on the show. Kirk Howley, who has been a previous guest on this show, has also been a guest on the show. So check it out. It's a fantastic show all about cartoons and animated stuff, with a tremendous theme tune by Matt Farley of Motone Media. And just like a couple of our previous shows, our second sponsor this week is again the fantastic Rich Dalzotto, who's the organizer of Horror Realm, Pittsburgh's modern horror convention, which takes place this year between March 4th and 6th at the Doubletree in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And you can find out all about it over at horrorrealmcon.com. That's horrorrealmcon.com, and they have a fantastic lineup of celebrity guests and vendors for you to meet and peruse this year. They have a reunion of sorts of the cast of Nightmare on Elm Street 3, 4, and 5. They have a reunion of the cast of Return of the Living Dead, including previous guest of the diner, Linnea Quigley. They also have Ken Free from Dawn of the Dead, Tiffany Shepis, Felicia Rose from Sleepaway Camp, and all sorts of great guests. I'm going to be there, and my lady Kim's going to be there, and Tim Gross is going to be there of Gross Movie Reviews and the Bloodbath and Boomstick podcast, as is Carl Pine, the other host of Bloodbath and Boomsticks. Ed Quillen will draw you as a zombie. Out of Print Dan will get you that movie you've not been able to find on DVD. He'll have it for you. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. So go over to horrorrealmcon.com and get your tickets today for March 4th through 6th at the Doubletree in Pittsburgh. It's going to be an absolutely fantastic event. So thanks ever so much, people, for sponsoring the show. It is absolutely tremendous. It's the only way we can do it. It's the only way we can keep the website up and running. It's the only way we can keep our equipment up to snuff. So If you want to sponsor the show, there are many ways to do it. I would definitely check out aftermoviediner.com for ideas. But the main one is Patreon. If you want to sponsor the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/aftermoviediner. Patreon is patreon.com/aftermoviediner. You can also donate direct on our website, aftermoviediner.com. And you can buy any of my albums over at miskplumbingfixtures.bandcamp.com, with a new album coming your way this very week over at miskplumbingfixtures.bandcamp.com. So why not go over there, get some music for your money. If you don't have any money, that's absolutely fine. Just rate, review us, iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, wherever rating and reviewing is possible. Please do that. Can't be bothered to write anything? It's absolutely fine. See me post anything on social media? Retweet it, share it, like it. Just whatever you can do to get the word out about the show would be absolutely tremendous. And lastly, I know this has been a long introduction, but we have a lot to get through before we start the show. Lastly, I would like to put a major call out to all people who would like to contribute to aftermoviediner.com. If you've always wanted to review your favorite movie, or if you wanted to write an article about your top 10 favorite hats worn in movies, or if you want to write an opinion piece about horror movies or about science fiction movies or a certain director or whatever it is, if you want to do video reviews for us, and we've got a fantastic Teo Duval who's going to be doing some great video reviews for us. If you want to join her and add your own videos to the website, please just email me at aftermoviediner@gmail.com. That would be tremendous. Email me and become a contributor to the After Movie Diner. And now, let's go to a diner with my co-host Jim Wallace and discuss Hammer horror films. All right, and hello and welcome to this week's episode of the After Movie Diner, and I'm back in New York City with Hammer expert, and he knows quite a lot about spanners too. It's Mr. Jim Wallace.
I just got the Hammer spanner thing.
Thank you, excellent. Wrenches for American audience.
Wrenches and wenches.
Wrenches and wenches and hammers and bangers. And what did we go see, sir?
We went and saw The Vampire Lovers, the AIP and Hammer co-production.
Yeah, so American International Pictures and Hammer got together in the 70s. Because what I learned doing my Hammer podcast for my other show, which is a real horror show over at the Diabolique magazine website, is that Hammer over in the US was distributed and presented by many different companies and studios. Warner Brothers did for a while, a whole bunch of different people did for a while. And then in the 70s, just as Hammer was sort of waning, because the slightly more gruesome horrors were coming out and stuff
more grindhousey European stuff.
Exploitative stuff was coming out. Hammer hitched their wagon momentarily to AIP, who were known for doing the drive-in movies, because obviously Roger Corman and the like had worked for and run AIP for a bit back in the 60s. Yeah. And so we get The Vampire Lovers from 1970. A little bit of lesbianic vampiric action, a lot of nudity, a bit of gore, but still with the old Hammer pomp and circumstance, as well as Peter Cushing and George Cole knocking about some old dusty castles and spouting a lot of old guff about vampires, which is what we get.
Yes.
So that's what we went to see. It's part of the AIP series, which is running at the moment at the Anthology Film Archives.
Yes.
And we have sashayed up to Paul's Burger Joint up on St. Mark's Place in 2nd Ave.
Yes.
To discuss said movie, and also a Peter Cushing marathon you ran the other week while the blizzard was going.
Yeah, while the blizzard was on, I don't exactly know what it was that seized my imagination, but I had to watch. For some reason I thought it would be a cool idea to watch, I wanted to watch old black and white horror movies during the blizzard, like while the snow was falling. Right. But that kind of morphed into, actually what I'd like to see is lots of Peter Cushing movies, and I don't know why, I wanted to.
Right.
So I watched Horror Express, and Now the Screaming Starts, Dracula AD 1972,
which is the prequel to Satanic Rite,
which is the prequel to Satanic Rite,
which we did on the show previously,
and Curse of Frankenstein,
which is great. And one other you said.
No, that was it. It was those four.
What was the one you didn't like? Where you thought?
Oh, I only got 15 minutes into
The Beast Within.
The Beast Must Die.
The Beast Must Die.
Which was had a super cool opening.
Yeah.
Because The Beast Must Die started with them going, this is a murder mystery with a difference. You must follow the clues. But instead of discovering who is the murderer, you must discover who is the werewolf. I go, wicked. And then it started off with like, it was a teensy bit racist because it was like a black man being hunted down by a bunch of white guys with guns. Going, all right, well, it was the 70s, I suppose. But it was quite neat. They flipped on his head. It turns out the black guy was a rich millionaire hunter who was testing this, setup. But I couldn't get more than 50 because that was really cool, and Cushing was in it, and Charles Gray was in it, and Michael Gambon, like a young fat Michael Gambon. Michael Gambon got thinner as he got older. It's all the other way around, but as soon as they started talking, it became like unbearable. Like it was, everything about it was great.
Yeah.
But everything they said was like unbearable, and not like, oh, this is a bit hokey, just like nonsense, boring rubbish.
Right.
And so I didn't watch that one. But anyway, the Vampire Lovers.
So should we go? We'll go through the movie then. We'll start it off.
Yeah. All right. Do you want to do the plot? Or
we'll just go through the movie. No, we'll just go through the movie.
All right,
well, you could say why we decided to go. I wanted to go because having done the Hammer Horror episode of A Real Horror Show, where I did a lot of research, watched some documentaries, watched four of the big Hammer movies, and having kind of a cursory love for Hammer anyway, throughout my life, from back,
we both have.
back in the day.
Yeah.
But I can't claim to be any kind of expert, Jim.
Well, no, but me neither.
So I got my appetite whetted, let's say, by some of the documentaries I watched, and a couple of the ones mentioned the later movies.
Right.
Some of the later vampire movies and how they brought in the women and the nudity and the lesbian stuff and all the rest of it to kind of be like, all right, enough of Christopher Lee hiding out in churches. How about some of this, man?
Yeah.
I was intrigued because, the repression of the English mixed with the audacity of the Americans, when it comes to exploitation, was something that I was like, oh, that might actually lead to something a little interesting to talk about. So I was anxious to see it, having done the research for the previous show.
Well, I wanted to see it because I've been seized by the Peter Cushing, who I think is I think Peter Cushing is my Donald Pleasance.
Right.
I love Peter Cushing and I will watch him in anything.
Right. But I'm the same with
great.
Peter Cushing as well. Like, if I have to pick anything out of the Hammer thing, Christopher Lee's amazing, and a lot of the other, like Michael Gough and other people who they had in it, is always good fun to see some of those old British actors cut their teeth in Hammer. See what I did there with the vampires and the
very
teeth cutting
clever.
and the whole
I
thing?
liked it.
It was good. But if I'm going to watch a Hammer movie, it has to have Lee or Cushing in it. If it has Cushing in it, I'll definitely watch it. That's how it goes.
No, I would go along with that. I mean, I would watch the. I've seen plenty of just Christopher Lee Draculas because I think Cushing's only in a couple. But I do far prefer them. He's in the first one.
He's in the first one. He's in AD 72, and he's in Satanic Rite.
I think those are the only three of those.
And he's in this one, and he's in the Seven Golden. What's it?
He's in
one.
Brides of Dracula as well, apparently, which I've never seen.
He did one with the Shaw Brothers when Hammer started hitching their wagon to various different studios.
Right.
He did the Seven Golden Vampire one over in Asia, but he was the only one to go over there. But like Donald Pleasance, Cushing seemed up for anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Pleasance, it's like you imagine his agent called him up and went, a mad story about drunks in the outback of Australia, fancy spending a couple of months out there? Sure, why not? Let's go do that.
Well,
and Cushing's like, imagine spending a couple of months out in Asia while you make some hokey vampire movie.
Ready to order? Yes.
And he goes, yeah, all right, I'm up for that.
Well, apparently Cushing once said that he liked doing the movies that he did, and he did them because he wanted to give people what they wanted.
Right.
Like he
Whereas Lee was always like, I'm not showing up again.
He's a bit sniffy.
Yeah, right.
What's the fried chicken platter? What's that?
It's half a chicken deep fried with fries on the side and a salad, lettuce, tomato.
Sounds like a bit. I think that's a bit much for me. Go on, you order. What do you get?
I'm just going to get a cheeseburger.
How you like it then?
Medium well, please.
Got deluxe, lettuce, tomatoes, fries.
Deluxe, yeah. Can I get Swiss cheese?
So that'll be the Alpine burger.
Sure.
Alpine is the Swiss burger.
That's perfect, man.
You
Yeah.
take onions?
Yes, please. Fried. Fried onions. Yes, please.
I'll get the cheddar cheeseburger.
How you like that then?
How do you get it done?
Medium well.
Medium well. I trust you.
Yeah. Can we also get a side of brown gravy?
Sure.
Just a plain burger for me,
Okay.
not
No
deluxe.
onions at all? Okay. Sorry, great. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Are you
much.
getting deluxe?
Yeah,
Okay, cool. Thanks, thank you.
but it doesn't come with tons of fries, dude. So.
No, I don't want any
Oh,
fries.
okay.
No, I was going to get, but if it's like an entire half chicken that they've just deep fried, that's,
Right.
no, that will kill me. Yeah, sorry, but he said something like people don't want to see my Hamlet, people want to see me kill vampires, something like that. So that's what I do, and I think
Well,
that's,
I don't want
that's
to.
cool.
I don't want to skip to the end of Vampire Lovers, but all I'm going to say is that they did what they did with Cushing in the end of the movie was awesome.
Agreed. I mean, my only
Because there's so many times that you get into those movies where you're like, I really want to see Pleasance wrestle the monster. I want to see Cushing kill the vampire. I want to whatever. And then it just goes, wah, 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 and they have Jeff No Chin in a bad wig playing, Mr. Young Handsome Guy swing in and save the day. And I'm like, not interested in him. Get rid of him. And this movie did it perfect. They sent Mr. Flappy Face off to the house to save the girl with the big knockers, while Cushing got to finish it all up and do the business.
That's great.
And I thought, you've done me good right there. That's great.
But I think, that's why I went to see Vampire Lovers, because it had Cushing in it, and it's
As
not
the general.
as the general,
Yeah.
and it's not often you get to see. I mean, I've never seen a Hammer film. It's the first Hammer film I've seen on the big screen,
Right.
and it wouldn't have been my first choice.
No.
But it was a Hammer film, and I remember seeing some of it.
Right.
Like, you know what it's like with Hammer films when you're a kid?
Yeah.
You remember 20 minutes of this one and
Right.
half an hour of that one.
Right.
And that I can't even remember which, but I remember seeing it. But it was a lot more. I remember thinking, this isn't really very hammery, but actually it was a lot more Hammer than I remember.
Yeah. I mean, okay, look, we don't have to necessarily go through it blow by blow, but
Well, we could talk about the plot. We could do
yeah.
plot recap.
basically, there's an old family that aren't the Draculas, but might as well be the Draculas.
Well, it's based on a very famous book. I think it's the most famous vampire book after Dracula, called.
No, that would be the Matheson one, I Am Legend.
Yeah, but I mean, as in proper old-fashioned
old,
legend vampire,
frilly, yeah,
not
right.
vampires, monsters.
I get
thing.
it. Right.
Called Carmilla.
Right.
And they made because it's about a lesbian vampire. I think they made a whole bunch of films based on that book. But it's quite because it's. I can't remember. Anyway, there's a bunch of movies based on it. And it's kind of, it's like a erotic, lesbian vampire stuff.
Right.
So that whole family thing, it's not, because one of the things that happens at the beginning of the movie is this flashback to him killing most of the family.
Right. So basically there's this family that were all vampires, essentially, right?
Right, haunting a village, a specific village.
Yeah. from an old castle.
From an old castle.
And Blokey has all this knowledge about vampires, not quite sure how, but he's...
Well, it seems, what was cool about the movie is it seems to be like it's been half forgotten, you know, after like 20 or 30 years.
Except by the villagers.
Except, but yeah, most people accept the idea of vampires.
Right.
Like when they see like 2 bite marks on the neck in the movie, they don't go, oh, don't be silly, vampires don't exist or anything like that.
Right.
There's a whole like, oh shit, it's vampires. Like they go from, I wonder what could be wrong, to oh shit, it's vampires. Like really quickly.
Right.
Because it's this generally understood fact of village life that, oh yeah, a family of vampires used to live there.
But anyway, he finds out that there's this shroud, and if she doesn't get the shroud, if the vampire doesn't get the shroud or something, vampires are going to walk forever. So anyway, he drags the shroud into the castle to get the vampire to come in. He beheads the vampire and then spends the rest of the night digging up the rest of the family's graves and plunging a stake into their heart.
Yes.
Killing all but one of them.
Well, he thinks all.
No, okay, yeah, but I mean, he kind of knows there's one missing. Because he sees a painting on the wall of a young woman that he knows he
No, he finds out later.
Yeah, well,
he finds out later.
I'm just paraphrasing it all because it really doesn't matter. So anyway, one of them is escaped, obviously. We cut forward a few years because that chappie's gone grey.
Yeah, it's like 20 or 30 years, I think.
A few years later, and Cushing, as the general, is holding a ball with a lot of young men, a lot of young women doing the dancing around thing. And in comes like a countess type who has a daughter and says, and another chap shows up who's got a cape on, who's clearly Christopher Lee not appearing in this movie, so we'll get some guy with big heavy eyebrows and a big black wig, and he can be Dracula or whatever. He shows up, tells the countess to tell Cushing to look after the daughter. She makes some excuse and buggers off, leaving Ingrid, sultry, breasty Pitt lingering about the place to essentially seduce and eventually drain and kill the daughter, well, the niece, rather, of Cushing.
Cushing's niece, right.
Which she does. And at which point Cushing goes, well, I'm off. And he buggers off.
Well, he goes to find... What happens at that point, they discover...
well, he goes to find the guy who killed all the vampires.
No, because it's important. When she dies, everyone in the room, the doctor, Cushing, and the bloke that runs the estate, all know that it's a vampire that's killed her, and they look up for the woman, for Ingrid Pitt, and she's not there. So they all know she's a vampire. Like, they all know that.
Right.
And so Cushing heads off to the guy that, knowing, okay, well, this has presumably got something to do with that family of vampires that lived here a few years back. I'll go and see the bloke that killed them all. So Cushing then leaves the film, which is, let's not beat around the bush here, to the detriment of the film. No question.
Yeah, because they replace him with George Cole and a guy...
But then he leaves the film too.
Yeah, but who's the guy, what was it, Wrigglesworth or Rigsworth or Rigsby or what?
No, Renton.
Renton, that was
Bit of a nod to Dracula?
Yeah, possibly. But Renton and Kate O'Mara, who is the...
French tutor.
The French tutor of the house. Anyway, we then... The story then shifts to this other stately home, George Cole's stately home.
Yeah, like next door, mate. Same idea, but next door.
Well, they both know... Because George Cole was at the dance party at the beginning, but left before Carmilla showed up.
What's her face? Right.
But they know each other, and the young man who was suiting Cushing's niece is the connective tissue, the guy who kind of knows both houses.
I mean, his only function really is to hang over.
Well, he almost threatens to show up and unveil.
But that's it, really. So there's a feeling of, because everything that happens in the second house is just a repeat of what happens in the first house, and it takes longer.
It's more dragged out. She
more
does
dragged
it.
out.
So anyway, basically, Ingrid Pitt shows up at the second house.
Does the same thing.
Having
George
what?
Cole's daughter.
George Cole is riding off to town comes across a broke down carriage that has the...
Yeah, it's another trap.
It's another trap, basically. But we never find out about, like, the Countess woman. She never crops up
Well, no,
again.
but that's... So,
and we never find out about the guy on the horse who's meant to be...
We'll get to that.
Right,
I think that's a different discussion. But yeah, so basically, the same thing happens again in the second house, but this time...
There's more nudity.
But this time they figure out it's vampires before the daughter dies, and Cushing and the bloke that killed them all the first time ride back, essentially
meeting the father and the young chappie who's been ruining Cushing's niece, but is now working on a hay carriage or something. Anyway,
he runs the estate.
Right. He's a big chin, big silken brown haired hero.
Right.
Basically, who's a bit of a catch, and him and George Cole bump into Cushing and Chappie Von Hulk, or whatever his name was, who killed the people at the beginning.
Right.
His name is Von Honk or something like that.
Yeah.
So they all go to the castle, but before they go to the castle, they send young Chappie back to George Cole's estate to save the daughter. So he rides off. So it's quite nice because at the end of the movie you've got this thing where you're like running against time. Meanwhile, Ingrid Pitt is all over the house, turning Kate O'Mara into a vampire and Renton into killing Renton, and she's seducing everyone who's got a pulse and killing some people and turning other people into vampires, blah, 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 blah. In a desperate attempt to get back to her grave before they can stop.
No, that's not true. That's not true.
Yeah, it is, because he says at the end she needs to have a big feed because she knows that good is amassing against her, so she will have a big feed and come back to her grave so she can sleep
because she could before she seduces the butler, before she gets the maid out of the way, she ignores O'Mara, who she could feed on quite willingly. She could leg it at any point. She could feed on O'Mara and leg it for because all anybody apparently cares about is the daughter, right? So at any point...
But she's fallen in love with the daughter.
Right. There's most of it is to do with she seduces the butler and seduces the maid, all in the name of... And it's not really alluded to in the film, but I think there's something going on whereby the difference between this one and there's several differences between second bird and first bird. And the first one is she's not out in time. Like normally she's out before they discover what's going on. She's not out. We suggested like she's hung around too long. And also she tries to take what's her face with her. Like she could be feeding on what's her face.
The first one, the niece.
The second one, the daughter. She could have fed on the daughter, got on her fill, and buggered off back to the castle before they got anything. But she hung around too long, and they didn't really exaggerate that or underline that in the movie. But that was definitely what was going on. There was a lot going on.
Yeah, no. The difficulty was
in terms of like her, lust more than her need to feed.
Well, it wasn't just lust. It was. If written differently, if it was at a time where you could be more, not explicit, but more expressive with the idea
the
of...
lesbian angle.
Right, but
yeah.
I mean in a genuine way. I don't mean in an exploitative way.
I know what you mean.
You could have a genuine love story between the two characters, or certainly you could have her loving the other one and the other one being naive to it and not understanding it.
Right.
You could have told that story in a much more emotionally graphic way, not necessarily physically graphic,
no, you mean. Yeah.
But emotionally graphic way. So that Ingrid Pitt's character was almost tragic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there was that undertone, like when Ingrid Pitt finally meets the end of Cushing's stake. Not to spoil it, but come on, it's a movie from 40 years ago. When she finally does, the daughter does sit up and go, oh my God, no. Like the daughter has kind of fallen under her sway.
Yeah.
And it's interesting as well in this one because the vampire mythos is not entirely explained. Rather than turning them into vampires, she seems to be able to hold many people under her thrall while kind of feeding on them, because she is draining them because they are getting weaker and paler and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But they don't turn.
It seems to be kind of a...
But they are in her thrall. She can kind of control them. They are
true.
lustful for her and
That's
demanding.
true,
Yeah.
I think it seems to be... Sorry, on that point, right? One of the things that's interesting about the film is that it's got a different vampire mythology, clearly based on the book, where there's this whole thing that I've never read anywhere before about they need to be in their shroud for them to sleep peacefully in their grave. If they get their shroud, they must keep looking for it because they can't rest without it.
Right.
And then the thing about like the beheadings seem to be more than the stake, and she could exist in daylight. She could wander around in the day and in the sunlight.
Yeah, I mean, there was some talk about her hanging out in the shadows, but there was never her like steaming in direct
No,
sunlight.
but there was that bit when she's in the daughter's room at the beginning when she says, she goes, open the curtains, let the daylight in, because she's dead. Whoa!
Yeah,
That was
right.
kind of, so there's definitely like an idea of like you're not entirely comfortable with what's going on and what it means, and there's not that thing of well they're vampires, so straight through the heart and the cross and all the rest of it and we'll be fine. They are affected by crosses, but I don't know, there's like that uncertainty and the fact that she doesn't like, there's the peasant girl, like she does go into places, feed, kill them, and she's gone.
Right.
Like it's possible for her to do that clearly, and they're dead when she's done it, and presumably she gets her fill. But there's other, like the niece in the first house and the daughter in the second, where it seems to be more like an affair.
Right.
You know, and there's obviously at least I mean I don't know this, but I'm guessing in the book there's some subtext maybe
Of course.
of like how like a
I have to say,
sordid affair like saps the
I have to
the
say,
morals or whatever.
I have to say that the cat metaphor was
Oh yeah,
absolutely awful and hoary, really. Hoary
no,
metaphor.
like think about it in terms of the of the time itself.
But that word exists in the time,
But again,
as in pussy is what I'm saying.
Right. But I wouldn't be surprised if that was from the book. Again,
no.
The vampires. She wasn't a bat. She wasn't a wolf. It was this, this huge cat.
Right. Which is also like feline sensuality. That is a thing.
Yeah.
So you could maybe describe it more sensual. And it did allow them, I guess, to do this, first of all, slightly psychedelic thing of going black and white, but then having like overlaid pictures of cat's eyes and then Ingrid Pitt's face and like all this stuff. Mixed with, thank you so much.
So I agree with you.
Thank you, lovely.
Mixed with the woman in the bed having a dream. That's great, thank you so much. Having a dream that could almost be orgasmic, you know what I mean? Like they get away with basically having a sequence in which, if you let your imagination go, the woman is performing oral sex on the other woman, but without ever seeing it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, there was even a shot of the daughter that suggested that was what was going on.
Right.
As if it was going to pull back and there'd be somebody under the sheets.
Yeah.
There was that.
Well, they were always like grabbing at their abdomen and writhing as if the cat was attacking them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Could we just point out as well, this is the first diner that I can remember in the longest time where when you've asked for gravy to be served with your chips, it's come at the same time.
Yeah.
And you haven't had to ask, oh, by the way, don't forget the gravy. And then
Right.
20 minutes later, the gravy's gone. I'm just saying it's a good,
It's good. I love Paul's.
it's in the diner's favour for sure.
Look at the size of this burger.
Great. Now, if we're going to be honest now, right? Yeah, there were all these things going on, and there were some nice bits, and I like the opening particularly. The opening was genuinely really spooky,
Right.
with the Baron guy waiting in the church for the vampire family to come back, and there was that weird like vampire underneath this shroud, doing this crazy like gyrating in the fog, and it was quite spooky and quite cool. And I liked, just loved seeing Cushing. And Cushing at the end was great. But was it any good? Like, if we're going to be honest, really?
The biggest problem with it was the pacing. That was the biggest problem with it. Is that they had a ton of they were also what's the word? Constricted and confined by just how much they could go into.
Yeah, that's probably
like, and I don't mean that again. There was, like, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of nudity, right? There's even one point where she's like, "Oh, put on one of my dresses and go down for dinner." So she puts on one of her dresses, which appears to be see-through.
Yeah, that was
right?
weird.
And her dad, like, basically sees her through a little bit of blue chiffon, completely nude.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was a bit weird. So there's plenty of nudity. So it wasn't that, but it was that they, and this happens with a lot of Hammer, to be fair, they don't have the strength of their convictions in terms of telling a real Gothic romance. You know what I mean? Like, they go as kind of far as they think they can go, but then they leave it all very kind of vague, and it's almost like a jigsaw puzzle you have to figure out. It's not like there's no picture on the box, you know what I mean? So, and then there are vast swathes where there's repeated shots of that guy on a horse on the hill who's like seemingly her vampire master, but there's no explanation of it.
But all that stuff I quite like, because that all spoke to this idea of nobody really knowing what was going on. Like, it never explained who the guy was, because he seemed like it, but then when you look back at it, you think it's more of a voyeuristic thing, because he's obviously letting her do whatever she wants to do, and all she's doing is seducing young women and then feeding on them at night, and every time that she feeds, he is outside, like, and he's always laughing or enjoying it, and it seems more like, 'cause it's not as if he comes in and has a feed, is it? We never see him feed.
No.
So he's clearly, he is a vampire, we see the tip. So it's more like he's just watching. It's a voyeuristic thing. And there's lots of things about the movie that I like that are really cool.
But there's a lot of, like,
strange, odd details that are hinting at this weird, dark things that are going on and reason. Because actually, all it really is a movie, and this is kind of where it falls down, is it's just two women in a drawing room or a bedroom talking, and that's basically it. And occasionally there's like some teeth or boobs, but like not that much. It's mostly just two women in prim dresses in a drawing room talking, and they're not talking about in ways that are like where it's like there's an awful lot of undercurrent in anything.
Right.
It's just talking. So there's way too much of like, oh, now they're underneath a tree and they're having a bit of a chat. Now they're in a room having a bit. Well, can we?
Well, to me,
more things need to be happening because the red-headed one was comfortably the worst actress I've ever seen. You know,
right.
She was very beautiful,
right?
But I couldn't figure out. Right, I couldn't figure out if either there wasn't a thought in her head for the entirety of the filming, or as soon as she stops being like, "Oh, I'm innocent and I don't have a clue about what's going on," that as soon as like the camera stopped rolling, she's like lighting up a fag and like cracking dirty. You know what I mean? Just like terrible at being innocent. You know what I mean? Like that. There was so little substance to the idea of her being naive. It was almost a parody.
Right.
Like that's what the acting was like. And Ingrid Pitt, who they were clearly going for like a Marlene Dietrich kind of vibe. I'm sorry, but she is not. She's not exactly what you'd call a stunningly beautiful woman. She's a very unique presence, I suppose, on the screen.
I don't know.
I just didn't think she was that. I mean, she was all right.
She's naturally beautiful.
I suppose. I just think.
And physically, I mean, for that day and
so
age,
much of the film was her and Madeline Smith in a room together, and neither of them can act their way out of a paper bag. And it was still a Hammer film, so they had their clothes on for most of the movie, and so you're being asked to sit through a good what? If you broke down how much of the movie was those two in a room talking to each other, given the amount of acting ability they possess, it was too much time. That's how I feel about it. That's where I felt the film fell down. It was very...
What bothered me more than that was like in the opening sequence with the dance, prolonged shots of people wandering outside and getting into carriages and riding off, and people we don't care about, and Cushing going out and saying, "Good night, sir," "Oh, good night," all that stuff. And you kind of think to yourself, is it because you got the use of that house for the evening?
I think they were short of footage because it's a very short movie, and there was that unbelievably weird flashback by the butler. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Where he's in a room, the butler, with the woman, and the woman goes, "Oh, I don't think, I won't send for the doctor. I'll send the doctor when I need to." And then literally 3 minutes later,
he's in the
pub, and he goes, "Why won't she send for the doctor?" And then it flashes back to the scene we just saw of her saying, "Oh, we don't need to send for the doctor," or whatever.
Right.
And it was just like, well, why would you put that in there? We haven't forgotten. I mean, what was annoying is I really liked him. Like, the butler was brilliant. He was such a great character. And I felt like they did him a bit of a disservice, kind of, having him be fooled by the woman at the end. It was a bit like...
I just thought...
But I really liked him.
I thought it was 50% fairly interesting, fairly daring, fairly seductive.
I enjoyed watching it.
Fairly seductive gothic romance that, if you want to give it the benefit of the doubt, you could read into what we were saying earlier about her being slightly a tragic figure and sort of almost destined to repeat this story over and over again until she gets either caught and or is able to turn this woman into a vampire as well and live happily ever after, I presume. And the one thing it lacked was why she didn't just turn her into a vampire. That's what it lacked. That's what bothered me. Because it was never explained if the dude on the horseback was someone she turned. Right. Which, considering she's apparently the only one of the family left, right?
Well, that makes sense, I guess. You're saying he's like a protector.
He could be someone that she turned. She is capable of making people vampires, right? And she says to the redhead at the end, like, "I will make you strong again. Come with me and I'll make you strong again." Why she didn't do that was never explained. Like, why she didn't just sneak into her room before they put the garlic in and all that stuff. When she first fell in love with her, why she didn't turn her into a vampire, I don't know. So to me, there was a couple of, like, frustratingly unanswered things.
Well, I think the problem is that, just like you say...
But let me finish. Anyway,
I'm sorry.
So 50% interesting, daring for the time, gothic romance with some vampire action, and then 50% of utter drivel, like 50% of just tedious, badly paced, slow acted, not very well written shots of the British countryside. And I know you could possibly say that about 60% of Hammer films. But I feel like this one in particular, it just didn't have it had the momentum come the third act. Like, come the fact you had Renton trying to keep the garlic and the cross in the room. It had a really lovely third act. And it had an okay first act. But the establishing of the love affair between her and the redhead in the second act, apart from the exploitative scenes, was kind of dull.
Yeah, I agree. And I think presumably the idea is that she's supposed to be just another victim, that she's slowly drained and presumably has fun draining. Like, that's the idea. But as it goes on, she decides she wants to, have more than that, that she's fallen in love, and then that's what brings about her downfall, I guess, is the story. But neither of them had the acting chops to make that work without dialogue. And as you say, they don't have the dialogue because they're a bit, they don't want to talk about lesbianism, that other, it's all like, because it's...
Well, they skirted around it with this conversation about when a big strong man comes to take me away kind of thing. and she says, "I love you, but in a different way." And then Ingrid Pitt's like, "But I love you, and I want you to be with me forever." Like that was the closest they got to kind of really talking about it.
Well, oddly enough, that could all have been solved. Most of the exploitation that happened with the redhead was just like passive, you know. I think a lot of it could have been solved if they'd had, and this is why I should be a Hollywood producer, could totally have been solved by a big, steamy, hot lesbian sex scene, like right in the middle of it. Clearly, neither of them had the problem, you know, unloading their knockers, right? And if they'd had, like, a scene, like a genuine
I wondered,
scene,
listeners, until Jim went into his how to turn this into a, you know, NC-17 porn movie, but yeah, anyway.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying clearly it was supposed to be an exploitation piece. That's why all the weird, you know, but there was a lot of like weird boob shots. Like, why are we having like, she's dead and then the doctor pulls her top down and does her boob. It's quite neat that, oh, well, that's where the vampire bite is, and that's where you never spotted it. But it was just like, it was such a weird first boob to have in an exploitation film. Like, half an hour in, on a dead bird pulled down by a doctor, like listening to a chest go, hey, what a weird boob. Like, that's what I remember thinking. But if they'd had like a scene between the vampire and the girl, and it had been like a hot lesbian sex scene that like made all that lesbian stuff overt, and it was like, you know, then you've got her under the thrall, and then you've got the, you know, her lust, and then you could see her being like drawn into it. But it was all a bit like, they were a bit.
You know, the only two people who had any chemistry was her and Kate O'Mara. Like,
Yeah,
when they
that's
were
true.
making eyes at each other, and Kate O'Mara went into the bedroom, I totally understood it. Like, I totally got the
Oh,
seduction.
that's true, you're right. She was actually pretty good. Imara was very good. The butler was very good. Weirdly, the maid was very good. Like, you don't often get like believable people in these movies. It was only a tiny part, but she was pretty believable. Cole was okay. Cushing, I needed more Cushing. I'm a bit disappointed that they made Blokey Blokerson the Baron and not Cushing. I don't understand why. Like, I like that they had Cushing do the thing at the end,
Tombstone face from
but
the
it should have
beginning.
been Cushing at the beginning, and it should have been, even though I liked him in the beginning, and he was very good. But given his character, it's supposed to swoop in at the end with the I'm an expert in vampires and I'll kill you all. Surely you give that part to Cushing. You don't give, because he didn't have anything else to do apart from, you know, stake her at the end, which was great. He didn't do anything. You've got Peter Cushing. How are you not doing more with him? And I think if you'd had Cushing as the bloke at the beginning, and you had a hot, steamy lesbian sex scene with like actually playing up the exploitation angle, which would also make everything that's happening between these two characters that you're following for like a large part of the film.
Hang on a second.
Right. Like, they clearly do have hot, steamy lesbian sex, so why don't we just see that?
Well, we saw as much as you could do in the 70s. You saw her like...
Oh, come on. Do more than that.
Not in a Hammer movie. You've got to sell to like people who also watch, you know, the quaint little drawing room movies with a monster
But
in it.
they obviously didn't make it for that crowd. Obviously that crowd didn't exist anymore. They made it to see, do we have a future in exploitation drive-in movies? And yeah, I agree, they tried to keep like an element of class in it, but it could have been a classy hot steamy lesbian sex scene.
More than we saw with the first woman, the niece. At least with the daughter, there was that bit where instead of showing up as a cat and doing stuff to her, and instead of like chasing each other, tickling after a dress or whatever, there was that sequence where like they're on the bed, she pulls down her top, she starts to kiss her, and she starts to kiss down her body. Now the camera doesn't follow, but you see the daughter's face and boobs, and you're aware of what's going on.
But it still fell under the whole kind of like. It's not that scene wasn't like hot and steamy, but that was a seduction scene rather than something that they were both involved in. Do you know what I mean?
No, I think that was the point where I think that's the point where the daughter was like, maybe I do love her.
I mean, maybe you're right. Okay, maybe Mr. Fucking, you know, integrity. The movie's problems. Thanks very much, mate. The movie's problems can't be solved by hot, steamy lesbian sex.
No, I think it's solved by...
But I definitely think that...
it's solved by, instead of...
They cast the two leading women, based on their looks.
Instead of a
And I feel like if O'Mara had been the...
Daughter.
No, the seductress. She's got a very cat-like, feline face.
Right.
Ingrid Pitt's got a very weird, not weird, but like, it's a very, like, it's a hard, angular, Germanic face. It's not really very feline. It's not terribly seductive. It's kind of icy and whatever. But O'Mara has that kind of, like, feline... And as you say, she had a lot of, oomph about her in the movie. And if they cast somebody who, could act instead of Madeline Smith.
Well, I don't know. I think... I mean, I know where you're going with it, and I understand. I think that, personally, the problem with a lot of these is that the guy who writes a script...
By the way, the guy's name who wrote the script was Tudor Gates, which is it's got to be made up.
Tudor Gates, right.
But it's a great name.
How do we get to the castle? Tudor Gates!
Also, like, the producer's name is something really weird. Like, it was like... it's something like Frank Nice and Arthur Special.
I don't know.
It was like... seriously, their names spell out like a nice and special, or...
Special and nice. Well.
Special, but no, like a phrase, like...
Right, okay.
Nice and cool, or cool and easy, or whatever, like a cool... Because clearly, again, not their real names. They wanted to have a cool and easy production, that kind of a thing.
I didn't notice that. So...
It was there, it happened.
What was I saying?
Probably you can talk about how...
I was going to say, what I think happens with a lot of these... It's not just Hammer movies I notice, and it's lots of older movies that were based on books. Is that the art of adapting books at a certain point was like going through them and going, okay, what key scenes do we A, need?
Right.
And B, what key scenes can we get away with in this case? Because I imagine the book is full of saucy going on, right?
Right.
And the guy reckoned, Tudor Gates, reading the book, he goes, all right, I've got to have this happen, this happen, this happen, this happen, and this happen. But the stuff happens without there being either the subtlety of the performance,
right,
and or the intelligence in the dialogue to really fully explain it. Now, we've seen enough of these movies and we've read enough of the books and we've, can hypothesize with the best of them, that when we're looking at it, we can go, okay, so there's this
by the way,
like...
Can we just make that the tagline of the diner now? We can hypothesize with the best of them.
Right. Yes. We can say to ourselves, okay, so there was a bit of a love affair there was a bit of a tragedy there was this, all the stuff that we're talking about. But it's not on screen, it's not in the script, and it's not in the performances. Like, we're assuming it based on, like, the raw bits that we're given.
Yeah,
but
right.
the biggest problem is they either don't write the script to have big eloquent speeches because they don't think the actresses can handle them, or they don't write the script because the guy just can't fucking write the script that way. And what I'm saying is, I think you're right. For something that is meant to be she wanted to kill but she fell in love, or whatever, or the love that dare not speak its name, or whatever it is, that kind of story, but with vampires, which is what it is. Right, it's naive girl has sexual awakening with,
right,
a much more older, seductive, vampire woman.
Although, according to the gravestone, she's 23.
Doesn't matter. Anyway,
No, I take your point.
It's too underwritten and too slow-paced to really do that justice.
And I think
that's the biggest problem.
And I think another problem, because I think you're right about all that. And one of the other problems is the guy that directed it, Roy Ward Baker, who did a lot of Hammer stuff. He did, and now the Screaming Starts that I watched, that was him. And he's obviously very good at evoking a mood and evoking dread, and getting the scares in and all the rest of it. But with a movie like that, when like you say, you can't say a lot with the script, and you can't, and the actresses don't have the chops to inject it with the undercurrents that it needs.
I mean, don't get me wrong, they were very brave and very they did their best. Like,
No, I know, but what I'm saying is then what you would want under circumstances to have is you would want a director who's like, I don't know, some mad Polish bloke that you brought over.
Right.
You know, like some guy who's able through imagery and like little moments and the way that it's cut and the way it's put together to like suggest all of these things.
Right.
Whereas it's just filmed like a Hammer film.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons that I think it's great. I love the look of the village, and I love the fog. I love that bit at the beginning with the vampire. The bits in it that look like a Hammer film, when Cushing's in the church, and they've got the portrait, all that stuff is great. It looks fantastic. But I feel like you need like a mad Polish guy in a beret. Do you know what I mean?
Well, like for example,
who's never made a vampire film before, coming in and injecting all this like weird sexual undercurrents into
I agree, but
the censors, it wouldn't like make the censors' monocles fall out. Do you know what I mean? Like that kind of go, oh yes, it's just another Hammer film. Was really it's like all this disgusting undercurrents being like suggesting. That's what you would need.
And I think
to make
that
it
with
work.
like the other thing, here's a great example. Like at one point, Kate O'Mara goes, well, of course, in this part of the world, they have all these fairy tales. That's the problem. And then later on, they go, well, you're an Englishman, so you wouldn't understand. And then there's another bit where he's like, well, I'm off to Vienna. And like, none of it is explained, right? All those bits, you're an Englishman, you wouldn't understand. And in this part of the world, they have a lot of fairy tales. I bet you there are either lines from the book or a scene from the book that has been boiled down to one line. And the problem with it is there is no preface that says, by the way, this takes place in, Austria or Romania or Germany or wherever it's
I'm assuming it's Austria.
Right? This guy is General von whatever, this guy is, Frankie.
Yeah, because it's like General von
Smith.
Schlievenhelm or whatever. It's all ridiculous. But you're right, because presumably, and again, we're speculating here, and maybe it's in the script and it got cut out if it's not in the book. But presumably the idea is English girl, comes, goes to the continent and, experiences like sexual awakening at the hands of a disgusting foreigner.
But if you had that,
rapacious, not disgusting.
But if you had that, and it wouldn't take, we're done. Thank you. And it wouldn't take a huge amount of dialogue, scenes, exposition.
Particularly the number of scenes
in.
they have where she's like reading to her from a book.
Right. That's right. Whatever. All I'm saying is, it wouldn't take too much to like sow more seeds of this stuff.
Yeah, agree.
To make it a more rollicking ride.
I agree. I think you're right. I think the biggest problem with the movie is that they're too nervous about how far they want to go. They think, what they thought was, we'll make a Hammer film and we'll throw some boobs in it.
Right.
And maybe that'll make us some cash. And that's all they really thought. And
that's all they really did.
And to be fair, they obviously, they didn't just like write another Dracula film and put boobs in it. Like they went to this famous book, this, clearly, very suggestive, very erotic book, and tried to make a film out of it as best they could. The people involved, probably the scriptwriter, I don't know. And then they get like a job, their standard go-to Hammer director to, make it look like a Hammer film, and then cast a couple of pretty girls in it, and they think, well, that's it, that'll make us the cash. But it wasn't enough of a Hammer film that
they could get away with
that you could just like throw boobs in and you could enjoy it. And it wasn't enough of a boobs film that like some Hammer touches would have made it neat. It was like neither one thing nor the other, because there was too much in the middle of the movie where the meat of the story, the undercurrents, the passion and the love, and it lost it because there wasn't anything there. There was no substance to it, and that's where it fell down. In the end, it ended up being two people who couldn't act in a room, and that's never a good movie.
That's why when Kate O'Mara was suddenly like, ooh, there was sizzliness going on here.
Yeah, there was, and
arched her eyebrow, and then she went into the bedroom and was like, that dim the lamp and remove the clothes or whatever, like.
And Renton was good too. Like
that
Renton
suddenly
seemed to come from a different movie. The butler guy.
That suddenly, I was like, oh, okay, not like aroused, but I was suddenly like, oh, okay, something's going to happen now. You know what I mean? I woke up from my oh my god, they're in the bedroom again, and okay, we get it. Like they're in love and they're reading out of books, and she's faint, and and that's the other thing. You can't get invested in what's going on with a daughter if you don't understand what it is the vampire has done to her.
Yeah, agreed.
Because it's all like vagarisms, right?
Yeah, and if anything, actually, having the vampire woman do the niece
should have given us all our exposition.
Right.
So that we understood
but instead it was like, oh, we're just watching this happen again.
Yeah.
Like it was too much, like because it wasn't like explored in any more depth.
Right.
All you ended up doing was watching the same thing happen again, only over a longer period of time, and at no point thinking, oh, I hope it doesn't happen to the bad actress, because it's not as if you're really invested.
No.
You know what I mean? There's no feeling of like dread.
In fact, if
about
anything,
what's
I
happening.
kept waiting for them all to become like vampires. Like I wanted them all to become
I was like, is she going to die at some point?
No, but it would have been cool if the end of the movie was like Renton and Cushing having to face off against like 5 hugely buxom vampire women.
That would have been
hissing
a cool ending.
and clawing and.
I feel like Renton got a rough deal because I feel like the only one that had any brains in the entire movie was Renton. And given that he had, I love the fact that he had his, what's the word I'm looking for? Epiphany.
Right.
While slightly pissed
in the pub
at the end of the night.
Right. No, but also
because everybody, right? Everybody's had their epiphany.
Yeah.
You know, while slightly drunk at the end of the night in the pub, right? We've all had that epiphany. But in this case, he has the epiphany and like basically saves the day. Is what he does. Because even though he ends up carking it, what he does prolongs things long enough to allow Cushing and all the rest of them to get back and sort the problem.
And he was really clever because he was like, when he showed up and Kate Mara was like, what's the doctor doing here? He was like, oh, Mr. Morton sent for him. Right? So then he gets away with the doctor being there, and then when the doctor leaves and he has to put garlic in the room and then put a cross on the neck and blah, 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 all the rest of it, every time Kate Mara tries to stop it, he's like, the doctor did say.
Yeah, we've got to leave
the doctor did say.
That was really neat.
Do you really want to like let Emma die with...
That was really neat as well, that bit where the doctor's like, oh, there's 2 holes here, and then the bloke's like, let's bring some garlic in. And the doctor says, come on, don't give me that, don't give me superstitious nonsense, this is science. And then Amara walks in and basically goes, oh, take the garlic away, I hate garlic, oh, get rid of it. And the doctor goes, yeah, maybe we should keep the garlic.
Yeah,
that was like neat.
Although there was a really weird bit where they were like, let's ask the pub owner. And he showed up in the bedroom.
Yeah, the pub owner was like,
out of nowhere.
Like, I'm the pub owner with the crazy nose. He had like the craziest nose.
Yeah.
And yeah,
he's like, I'll come up in this young girl's bedroom and give you some exposition
is
about
it really
vampires?
Well, don't take it from me. Here's the bloke that runs the pub. It's all right. You can tell me. We've already established that I believe you that it's vampires.
Right.
But it was neat, and it was neat to like have people show up because I guess he was supposed to be the voice of the knowledge of the village.
I give it a 6 out of 10 for effort.
Give it a 6. I tell you this, right? I enjoyed the experience of watching it, other than the silly. There was riff tracks cue irony behind.
No, irony cue riff
tracks behind it. Who kept laughing at like really inappropriate, like, oh, how ridiculous! Oh.
Like when he decapitated someone and Cushing held up the head, and it was an okay fake head. It wasn't like the worst fake head I've ever seen in a movie, but she was like guffaw at the fake head.
How delightfully ridiculous!
Fuck off!
I mean, I've never been closer to turning around and saying, would you mind shutting your cake off?
Or fucking off.
Right? It was really annoying. Because it was just like, it wasn't, oh, I'm enjoying this. I'm having fun.
Right.
It was like, oh, this is so, how ridiculous.
How twee, oh, look at it.
Oh, how ridiculous.
Oh, you mean they couldn't even
I can't believe people thought this was good. Fuck off.
Right.
Do not laugh at a Peter Cushing film. Anyway, it was, but it was surprising how full the cinema was. And it was, other than like people applauded at the end, and other than irony cue riff tracks, it wasn't, because I was a bit worried when she started guffawing. I was like, oh god, I hope it's not going to be like a cinema full of people getting ironic kicks out of like a, an old 70s vampire.
Which sometimes it can be, like when you go to one of those midnight screenings, there's a lot of people being like, oh, did you see he dropped the thing? Oh, but it's fine that he dropped it, whatever it is. Or...
It's like they made a movie. But it was like people, granted slightly peculiar middle-aged people, but they were all like enjoying the movie, because it's not often you get to see Hammer films. And I genuinely think, having watched all these, because like, take the And Now the Screaming Stars, right, that I watched. It was an Amicus, so it wasn't Hammer. So, it's later Cushing stuff. And it wasn't like the most original idea of all time. And like the reviews were giving it like 4 out of 10 or 5 out of 10. But I watched it and I really, really enjoyed it because it was really well put together. The female lead character was like spunky and like went to like find things out, and she was just like lying in bed and moan and complain while the blokes sorted out the problem. Like all the blokes were lying to her, and she wanted to find out what was really going on, and that was cool. And it was a pretty good mystery, you know, what happened. And it had Herbert Lom being weird, and it was, you know, it had like things going on, and it was fun, and it barreled along, and it had pace, and it had frights, and it had like, you know, and there were practical effects that were kind of cool, you know, and just like things that were there that it had weight, you know, and it was exciting, and I don't know, there's something about Hammer films that they're incredibly evocative, I think. I suppose because they're set in the past, in this time where it was a time when people didn't know what was real and what wasn't, and there, you know, there really were monsters, and people were afraid. You know, pre-Enlightenment, I guess, but when the world was still mysterious, there's some, when it's like when the night comes down, you need to be inside with the lights on and the fires roaring, because outside it is just pitch black and dark forest and, you know, looming trees. It was a frightening time, and there's something cozy about being a part of that experience, and they did it very well. And you know, and the costumes and the people and the music and the myths that they're creating about it are really affecting, and I don't know, I mean, maybe it's just because, you know, we watched a lot of them when we were kids and it's tied into that, but it's not clever, you know, like the vampires are evil, and the you know, the people who are trying to fight them off are good, you know, and that's what's going on. It's just good versus evil, and there's something, I don't know, attractive about enjoying, you know, the vampire myth at its source, and not.
Although I do like it, like I do like that they tried something different. I like that they tried something different with this. They tried something different with
I suppose
the satanic rites of Dracula.
Yeah, which again I really enjoyed. I mean, even Dracula 1972, which was palpably ridiculous.
It's utter pish.
Mostly because, and I feel because Stephanie Beacham was in And Now the Screaming Stars, and she was really good. Like, she was properly good. And in Dracula 1972, you can tell it's going, do I have to speak these lines?
Right.
Because these have obviously been written by a 50-year-old man who thinks this is how hippies speak.
Right.
And it was so dreadful.
Yeah.
And I felt for her. You could tell that I don't want to say this. This is so now. And her bloke is a bastard, running away from people when her friends are in trouble, screaming for her help. But, you know, I quite like the whole Johnny Alucard thing, and I quite like the that they were all getting together for a black mass, and I like that Cushing was, you know, Van Helsing's descendant, and there was like things in it that were quite fun and quite cool, and I liked a lot. And I liked that Cushing and Lee had a big fight on top of a wagon, and there was lots of stuff to like about 87, even though it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I did really enjoy the Satanic Rites of Dracula. I thought that was genuinely a really fun film, and like you say.
And wasn't it written by like one of the Doctor Who scribes from back in the day?
It might have been. With Satanic Rites?
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe.
I think so. That's why it's got the whole end of the worldy.
Yeah, that would make sense. I guess he is kind of a Doctor Who figure, Cushing, in the Satanic Rites. I've never seen Cushing's Doctor Who. I'm kind of.
He's not official.
No, because he's like an inventor, isn't he?
He did the 2 movies.
Yeah. He's like an inventor rather than an alien. But
a Time Lord, yeah.
I could have used more Cushing in the Vampire Lovers.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe he just wasn't around. Didn't have him for long.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was doing like 15 movies a week at that point.
Yeah.
So.
But he was, you know, I mean, he was great in. I haven't seen him be a bad guy, except Star Wars.
Frankenstein movies.
No, but that's what I'm saying. That's what I've never saw him in any Frankenstein movies. And The Curse of Frankenstein was great. I mean, it was so good. I really liked it a lot. And he was brilliant in it. She was terrible. That was a bit of a shame, but he was great. And Lee was really, really good. And I love that he was cast because he was tall.
Yeah,
so that's it. And then he ends up being Christopher fucking Lee.
Yeah.
I'd love to see the other Frankenstein movies.
The Frankenstein movies, a bit like the Dracula movies, go up and down. But like some of the later ones are really, really special.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, like what was the Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed. It's proper good.
Oh, really?
Proper good.
Well, you know what's annoying, right? As soon as I saw The Curse of Frankenstein, and I found out there were like 7 Peter Cushing Frankenstein movies, I thought, right, well, I need to own
all of them.
Peter Cushing Frankenstein
But
Hammer
you can't
box
over
set.
here.
No, not in England, not anywhere. There's
No, because
Frankenstein box set.
they're all owned by different companies.
Oh, fuck.
They're all owned by like 50 different companies.
It's
Warner
such a
Brothers,
shame.
because Warner Brothers put out this box set that I did the podcast about. Thanks. This Blu-ray box set where they redid The Mummy, a couple of like the weird end of the 60s Draculas, and Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed. And it's a great set. It's fine. Like, it was good for me because I got to fill in the couple of lead Draculas I hadn't seen. I got to see a later Cushing Frankenstein, which was awesome. By far the best movie on the disc. But then you also get Hammer's Mummy, which is by far like their classiest, standing up against the Universal horror movie. Like, it's
Oh, really?
there's
so many I haven't seen.
Like the original Hammer of the Mummy is, you know, it's quite rightly so a classic. Like, rather than being like, oh, it's a Hammer film, so therefore like 30% of it you have to kind of take on the chin. It's start to finish a classy production.
I'm starting to feel this, like, and it could be just because I'm getting older, or it could just be because that part of me that likes to collect things has been denied.
Yeah.
Like, there's no albums to collect anymore. There's no
Right.
DVDs to, like, you don't need any of these things anymore. But the fact that especially when it comes to like the old Hammer films, because the other one is always Horror Express, right?
Right.
Initially, when I started watching, I had this old, I've got like the Roku thing, and there was like a free channel. It's like, hey, you can watch old horror films for free. Like, oh, great! Oh, Horror Express is on there. So started watching Horror Express, and it was terrible quality, like
Right.
proper, like 4x3 panel scan, crackly, unwatchable. And then I subscribed to Shout. And they had it on there, and it was really nice version,
Yeah.
cleaned up, lovely, great film by the way. Love Horror Express, really cool.
That's the one with Telly Savalas.
Yeah, it's like, what is Telly Savalas doing in this movie? Like, there's no reason. They obviously went, this film's only 70 minutes long. What are we going to do? I hear, is that Telly Savalas at the end of the bar? So we find out if he's around.
Will Savalas come do his
We've got 10 minutes. Let's film Savalas being a Cossack.
Right.
So weird. But I now feel this irresistible urge to like collect Hammer films.
Well,
I feel like there's no other way to see them.
This is a plea.
Okay.
There are a couple of Anchor Bay box sets that are available, and a couple of other box sets that are available, both on Hammer and Amicus,
Okay.
across the globe that are worth picking up. But they're all on DVD, none of them are on Blu-ray. The Hammer box set that Warner Brothers just released on Blu-ray, which has the 4 in it. Warner Brothers owns like a big chunk of classic Hammer in the US.
Right.
And it took petitions and craziness to get these 4 out on Blu-ray.
Okay.
I urge everyone listening who's a Hammer fan, buy that Blu-ray, because I have it on good authority that they will remaster and Blu-ray more of Hammer if there's a demand. But if they go through all that, because it costs quite a lot now to produce a box set like that, even though there aren't really extras on it or anything, to remaster all those movies, to put it out in the quantity that they put it out in, to do box art, to do all the rest of it. Like, you're looking at quite a lot of money now for a studio to put out something that the studio quite honestly thinks like, we could make 1,000,000 times more than this by putting out another version of the X-Men, or not X-Men because it's Warner Brothers, Superman or whatever, than we could putting out some old Hammer horror box set. But if you make it worth their while by buying that,
Well, I am
they
starting,
will release more of it.
I am starting to feel like I
But that's the problem, is so many of them are in limbo, and the few big studios that do still own like a nice big cross-section are hesitant to spend all the money to put them out. Now, there are smaller Scream Factory and
there's a big
Severin,
box set. There's a big box
and
set.
something else has put out like a whole bunch of them.
Well, I know this. There was a big box set that was released because this is when I went looking for the Cushing box set. There was a big box set that was put out by Hammer not that long ago, and it's fucking expensive.
That's the Anchor Bay one in the UK. That's the one that's got like 12 or 18 movies on it.
No,
the
it's
one
got
that has a big like red cross on it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's Anchor Bay. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to get that.
Yeah, but it's all Region 2 DVDs.
Yeah, but I can.
Yeah,
that's fine.
And Warner Brothers.
But I feel like if I can get that, then I can fill in the gaps because that's most of it.
To be fair to Warner Brothers, if you're not concerned with the Blu-ray, but you want a nice widescreen DVD print of the movie, so you're not concerned with like the high quality Blu-ray, there are a few. They put out 4 of the lead Draculas and I think like 3 of the Frankensteins and the Mummy on like one of their Warner Brothers four movies on one disc thing.
Well, I've got the Dracula one. I've got it from your DVD Bronx store.
Yeah.
That's what got me going.
Yeah, so like there are some of them out where you can like for $10 pick up 8 Hammer movies just on one Amazon purchase, you know. So, all right, man. Well, look, that was fun.
I enjoyed that enormously, and even though it had its flaws, when it was done, all I wanted to do was start a Hammer collection. So rather than be put off by it, it reminded me of how much I love Hammer films, and there's just something indefinable about them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it's that they evoke a time and a place and a feeling in a really uncomplicated, unironic way.
Yes.
They don't expect you to like know the myth and second guess it and play on that. They just want to tell you a story, plain and simple, and I like that.
And I urge you and everyone listening to pick up the recent Warner Brothers Blu-ray 4-disc set of The Mummy, 2 Dracula movies, and Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed, because it's awesome. Also, check out DiaboliqueMagazine.com because they had a successful Kickstarter to produce an in-depth documentary to complement that disc, which will be coming out. Cool. And also check out the 3-hour-plus podcast I did with some Hammer experts, where we talked about everything Hammer and the US and all the different companies that now own Hammer and the movies that mean the most to the experts and blah, 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 blah. We really get into the meat.
Cool, I'll definitely hear that.
So check out that podcast, A Real Horror Show. Check out the documentary that Diabolique are making. And check out the Warner Brothers Blu-ray box set. Well worth a pickup.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Jim.
Cheers, man.
Bye now.
All right, so as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I have a new album coming out this week. It's going to be available over at miskplumbingfixtures.bandcamp.com, and like last week, you are going to get a sneak preview. This is recorded with last week's guest, Jay Mayo. It is called The Ballad of Wayne LeGraw, and it goes something like this. Enjoy, pick up the album this weekend, miskplumbingfixtures.bandcamp.com. Thanks. Be my handstand operator on this baby food swing. I got a face full of pancetta and an old wooden ring. You climb up a crooked drain pipe to shake your fists at the dimming stars. Barricade yourself in the doorway of 1,000 shutdown bars. Playing ravage, then counting your chickens. It's your round after all. Be a cage-raised hater of trumpets. Get down before you fall. I got a backpack full of roses. I got a liver full of bad ideas. Be sure to have your sunglasses on when the dust clears. It's all of the summers you ever spent wondering where all your money went. It's the orchestra you couldn't get in, to the party that's yet to begin, and the clowns are all waving goodbye from this ghost train cloud-filled sky. I got a dishwasher colored Corvette. I'm gonna drive drive it all over your town. You can't fight City Hall without breakfast. We should just tear the whole place down. You're a delight at the circus. They sluggishly obey your commands. I've been to worse factories than this one, and still